Anyone who's ever heard a ghost story knows there's more than meets the eye, or the spirit. In Salem, North Carolina, the story of the Little Red Man is a legend almost 200 years old. Beneath these well-worn floors, a horrific tragedy occurred on the night of March 25th, 1786, that spawned the legend of the Little Red Man. Salem, North Carolina was built in 1766. Salem was a congregational town, which meant that the church was the governing body of the town. They had strict rules to keep the peace, and their belief in the afterlife kept them on their best behavior. To the early Moravians, death was not the end, but the beginning of life in their eternal home. They believed in giving offenders many chances to repent in hope that they would find peace in the afterlife. So why were they haunted by the spirit of one of their own departed? Today, we're here to separate fact from fiction and to explore the story of the Little Red Man. His real name? Andreas Kremser. Andreas Kremser was born in 1753 in Pennsylvania and arrived in Salem at 19 years old to work as a shoemaker under the watchful eye of Brother Heinzman, a harsh disciplinarian. Over time, Andreas Kremser found himself to be a young man not bound by the rules of the Salem congregation. So the church stepped in and gave him extra jobs to do, and Andreas found himself adding chimney sweep and cook to his list of duties. As the single brother's house needed to be expanded, some of the single men helped dig down for the new cellar. As evening approached, the men went in for their evening worship service. Although it was dark, and the men were told to wait until morning, some went to continue digging. While one of the brothers warned that the soil was unstable, two men, Andreas Kremser and Joseph Dixon, continued working. Suddenly, the ground collapsed, burying Andreas Kremser alive.
Hi, I'm Karen Walter, and as you can tell, we're in the process of transforming this space into the future home of Learning in Place. However, in a previous life, this space served as the sick room for the single brothers who were living here in the single brothers' house.
Now, a sick room is just a place for a sick person to recover, or a person who may be dying to hopefully recover. In the case of Kremser, he did not, and he breathed his last at the age of 33. Afterward, the men would hear a faint tapping of a shoemaker's hammer at night, and they would say to themselves, "There's Kremser, there's Kremser, there's Kremser, there's Kremser, there's Kremser, there's Kremser."
I came to work here around summer of 2013. It was on a Monday, and on Mondays there's nobody in the single brothers house. I was getting ready for a children's tour. Well, I'm getting everything pulled out and set up, and I hear someone call my name. And I said, I'm back in the blue dyer shop where I was setting up. And I didn't think about anything else but getting those props just right. A minute later, Dixie. Well, I said, I'm back here. I'm back in the blue dyer. And I'm finishing up my props, and the third time I heard my name. So I go down the hallway, I go into the kitchen. Well, I'm looking around and I don't see a soul anywhere. It sounded just like it was coming from right here. Well, then within maybe a month or two, I'm bringing children into the single brother's house. And there's a teacher at the end of the line of the 10 kids. Well, here comes somebody stomping down the steps. And the teacher looked at me and said, "Did you hear that?" with great big eyes. And I said, just nodded and smiled and took the kids in. The next situation that came up, I'm next to the blue dyer shop, but I'm actually in the room where we're going to do the roof tiles. I was talking to the children who I had got in here, sitting on the benches, and I was getting ready to tell them about the pottery, and someone poked me in the back to where I stepped off the door frame, and I turned around to see if it was one of the sisters that needed something. There was no one here. When I would walk in this door after my 3 encounters, I would say, "I'm here, leave me alone, I got work to do." And then I didn't hear anymore.
Rumor has it that the little red man still roams the halls of the single brother's house. I have to say, in all the time that I've worked here, even as I'm getting this space ready, I haven't seen the little red man.
While we've learned a lot of facts about Andres Crimser, we know that there's some fiction tied to this story as well. One is that he was small in stature. I think that's because he was used as a chimney sweep, but we don't know that as factual. Other accounts have the single brothers seeing faint images, disappearing through doorways or hiding around corners. We know this to be fictional as well. Another myth is that Brother Crimser wore a red jacket or a red coat. We don't know this to be factual. There's also accounts that the single brothers heard the tapping of a shoemaker's hammer. I think that's completely ridiculous.
As we know, there has been many ghost stories for about 200 years now of the little red man being told all around Salem. And during the spiritualism time period, which is the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a resurgence of people really interested in the dead and those who have crossed over. And I have some tools here today that I'm going to talk about how they would have used those to communicate with spirits. Right here I have a pendulum. The purpose is to have it hanging as still as you can, and the goal is to ask a simple yes or no question. Have simple rules with it, like if the answer is yes, spin it clockwise. If the answer is no, counterclockwise. Crimser, are you here with us? Maybe not anymore. We also have tarot cards over here, and you can get as in depth with it as you can. And we have our dowsing rods here. And dowsing rods were not always used in spiritualism. It actually predates it by a couple hundred years. Originally, it was used to help find water sources or other minerals in the ground. The purpose of it is to hold it nice and loosely, and if you're walking across a line, you're trying to find your water, for example, it will cross, and that's how you know you found your water. And over time, this found its way into spiritualism way, similar to the pendulum swinging. You hold it, you ask yes or no questions, yes for cross, no, you keep it uncrossed. We can try it today. Crimser, can you cross the rods on the spot where you were buried alive? I think we found it. I have not personally had any experiences with the spirit that I believe to be the little red man, but I have many coworkers and friends who have, so I'm definitely more inclined to believe he's here somewhere.
In my years as being a museum interpreter here at the Single Brothers House, I've not seen a ghost. Neither the little red man, Brother Crimser, or whatever you have it.
This is the Single Brothers house. This is one of the locations where many of the single men in town would have lived during this time period.
Andreas Crimser, who having repented, should have, like other Moravians before him, gone on to his eternal home. So who is this specter visiting the house that he once lived and worked? Is it true encounters with the dead or vain imaginations? Should you come to visit Old Salem and come to the Single Brothers house, will you feel the chill, see the flash of red, or hear the tapping of the shoemaker's hammer? Will you be the one to discover if this is fact or fiction?